Hello friends. The operational situation at the front and news for the 14th of February. We will start with you, of course, according to the tradition of the Skopinski-Lemensky section of the front. Briefly, the Poyansk-Svitovsky section, we do not fix any new changes of a positional nature, the fighting persists. At the same time, attempts from the Russian side to improve the tactical situation are still present, especially in the area of Sinkovka. But we did not record any changes, the attacks were repulsed. But with regard to the Lyman direction, there is no subsiding. Attempts from the Russian side to further advance and improve tactical positions do not subside. They attack both in the direction of Thorns and Yampolovka. They are attacking not only in the area of Yar Laptev, as we said, and Yar Near, but there were also attempts, if you remember, about a week and a half ago, so there was also the presence of the enemy south of Yar Near and Yar Laptev. Well, and is making further attempts to improve the tactical situation in this area as well. Therefore, active hostilities continue. Including the round beam, attempts are being made, but relative stabilization. Relatively, it was possible to stabilize this section of the front. At the same time, it is necessary to proceed from the fact that attacks will continue in the near future, because we have talked a lot about this, about reserves, and they have transferred additional fresh forces, which means that they will try to increase pressure again in the direction of Ternov and Yampolovka. We do not record any new changes in Bologorovka. Active fighting continues in the eastern southeast. The situation remains to be clarified, because a number of positions that we noted are under the control of Russian troops. They are questionable. So, as you remember from drone footage, geolinking drone footage, we noted some enemy advance, added a gray zone. But there are reports that they did not hold. One of the positions, the Apu managed to knock them out. Therefore, all this information is being clarified now. But, we definitely do not record any new advances in this area. On the Bakhmut direction. So, as you have already understood, many of you have understood, most of you, that the enemy has changed the attack vector from Bogdanovka to Ivanovskaya, and from Kleshivka to Ivanovskaya, if we are talking about the northern and southern flanks. Offensive actions and assault operations are continuing now. On the northern flank, the enemy is attacking south of the Popovsky forest, as well as from the Kromov area in the western direction. One of the directions, one of them means, is just the same landing north of Ivanovskaya, which they expect to enter and gain a foothold in the near future, based on the fact that they are pressing not from one but from two positions in this direction. At the same time, there are also further attempts by Russian troops to improve the tactical situation. All the same, Vostokno-Ivanovsky are making further attempts to advance armored vehicles. The footage was published, so it means that from the limits of the red-gray zone, where the movement of armored vehicles, something was knocked out, something was destroyed, something retreated to its original positions. But, it is possible to pull up armored vehicles as much as possible, and attack Ivanovskoye itself, with its support from the enemy. As for Ivanovsky himself, some clarifications have been added on the gray zone, insignificant, somewhere it has been added, somewhere it has been removed. So, if we proceed from those shots that were published, where the enemy was present, then there are trenches, dugouts where he got hooked. It was then possible to inflict a fire defeat. Now the situation here on this site is being clarified, whether he is present at one of the positions, where he managed to reach along the road T0504. This is what we talked about, that he is making attempts along the forest belt, to the north and south of the road, to advance to Ivanovskoye itself, and take a number of advanced positions. So, the situation for yesterday, the situation for today. A minor gray area has been added here, a touch up here. As for the forest belts to the north of the enemy's advanced positions, where there are active hostilities, it means that there are attempts by Bakhmut himself to advance, but it is possible to repel. At the same time, we see that the pressure on Ivanovskoye itself is increasing, not only from the northern flank, but also from the southern flank. Attacks are taking place west of Bakhmut. To date, it is possible to attack and repel most of the attacks, but the enemy, as we see, will also continue in the near future. As in the Limansky sector of the front, attacks on Ivanovskoye itself, with the aim of just the same. Taking into account its approach also from the north, to disperse our forces as much as possible in the locality, well, and still try to find a gap in the defense when they attack with a wider section of the front. We are monitoring the situation. Then, we have to Avdeevka without any changes in the positional nature of the fighting. In Avdeevka, we will start from the northern flank, but not from the very north of Avdeevka, because for several days, we missed everything that happens in the type area. We were asked to comment in more detail, because there is very little information. In fact, if we proceed from the latest information that is available today, on the geolinking of drone frames. So the fighting is still at the junction of the red-gray zone. Russian troops are making further attempts to advance at the junction, which means that where we have a support line, there is a support line. There is a defense line. Then, the defense forces managed, as you remember, to dislodge Russian troops from a number of positions, and from these positions, where they have already gained a foothold, they are making further attempts to regain some of their positions again. An attack in the north-northwest direction, but we do not record any changes. The combat work is actually continuing, and the pace of hostilities is very high, but I repeat, we do not record any changes. As in the Stepovoy area, there are also attempts, but mostly they are all within the railway line, that is, to attack in the direction of Stepovoy, including with the support of armored vehicles. Now we turn to Avdeevka itself. Today, we received information that one of the columns of armored vehicles was destroyed, and actually the relevant footage was published by our centers. Pull up, but as we see, it is possible to amaze. Not only does everything come as it was before, it enters Avdeevka itself, but something remains, and sometimes large forces do not reach it. This is the first moment. Well, of course, now it is impossible to say that this will significantly affect the situation in any case, because there is very hard work on the industrial. Let's start right away to the avenue. There are a number of dubious statements, more from our side, of course, than from the enemy, that the APU was knocked out somewhere by Russian troops, somewhere they retreated. Look, the situation is very difficult, and they control part of the industrial avenue, despite the statement. Another statement, that this will not significantly affect. Our domestic telegram channels have started to carry quite a large audience, because there are other unpaved supply roads. I will answer you directly. There is no need to believe in it. Why? Because our AFU fighters themselves regularly publish videos where they show that the equipment will get stuck, well, a specific muddy road. That is, tanks are stuck, armored vehicles, so dirt roads are completely different. Therefore, the situation is really very complicated, and it is impossible to downplay what is happening in any case, because once again after Bakhmut, after Solidar, after Marinka, we begin to say that everything is fine, although the situation is actually not all right, as we see. Not everything is very good. So, Industrial Avenue, they control parts of it. The main offensive actions now are on the northern flank, in the direction of the log. For what? In order to interrupt the supply, well, of course, not only this part of Avdeevka remains, but also Avdeevka itself as Sohim. In other words, it is clear that a number of positions that they are interested in are conditionally the log complex, and about everything that we have in the area of Industrial Avenue north of the advanced positions, that is, to occupy this territory. That is why there are attacks from their side from the Garden Association from Chistyakov Street in the northwestern direction to the territory already, well, conditionally we will say, just the same Avdeevsky as the Sohim strike vector. Why? Because it is important to approach this building as much as possible and take it under control. This is one of the main goals. The second goal, of course, is to advance, improve the tactical situation, to take more advantageous positions. In the naturally already western part of Avdeevka, northwest, along Industrial Avenue, and active hostilities continue to go in the direction of Provoxelny Lane, that is, the whole gray zone is now, well, and we have a very heavy red joint, they continue fighting, including the Street of Heroes. There are also attempts to advance in the southern direction, so the Eastern Railway, on the part of the Russian troops, in any case. Attempts were made to improve the tactical situation, so active hostilities are also continuing. As for the Donetsk beach, as for the alley of the 50th anniversary of Avdeevka, as Sohim was asked to comment, because there is also a lot of information that they have advanced further, they have caught on somewhere, they have gained a foothold somewhere. Look, there is a lot of information, but no new information has been received, that they managed to completely take control of the 50th anniversary lane and move south. Periodically, of course, the DRG, small infantry groups come in. There are active hostilities, including with the support of armored vehicles, on both sides, but we do not record new advances. Now for them, I repeat, taking into account how they have taken positions, the main goal is the intersection of Industrial Avenue, with a section of the road He-0542. Well, and an attempt to climb north to Avdeevka as a Sohim, in order to completely take control of this area, approximately this area. One of their tasks. As for the position of eastern Avdeevka, we do not record any changes in this area. Are there any attempts on the part of the enemy to attack? Of course there is, including the Donetsk filtration station. In this area, attempts were made from the heater. Attempts were made to attack in the southwestern direction, in the direction of a conditionally landfill, or a garden association, let's say so, it was possible to repel this area. But there, I would not say that now, if we talk about regular attacks, that large forces are attacking, it is more distracting. At the same time, there is more and more talk about the southern section of the Avdeevka direction, about the southern flank, that there is a possibility that Russian troops can surround Zenit, the Zenit-Cheburashka fortified area, that is, bypass them. There were attempts of assault actions from the experienced in the direction of Zenith. From the fortified area north of Spartak in the western direction, it was possible to repel all these attacks. So the enemy decided to try to circumvent, which is why he is now making a key bet on making his way from the experienced to the Garden Association on Vineyard 2, and accordingly from Chernyshevsky Street, to advance as much as possible in the Garden Partnership itself, that is, to improve the flanking position, so that there would be no blow from the Cheburashka area. But it's too early to talk about it yet, because there are very, very heavy battles going on. A lot of statements of various kinds are received during the day, and even since yesterday evening, I would say, but it is better to focus on the information that will arrive late, and see the reality that exists, rather than, so to speak, wind yourself up that everything is bad, or as some of us are trying to present, that everything is fine, and the supply is quite good. Well, apparently, these people are far from what is happening there, I'll tell you so. Moving on. On May Day, we do not fix any new changes. In the Kurakhovsky direction, I will also comment on a very important point here. We spoke with you yesterday, and added a gray zone in the Garden Association, south of the Georgievsky rate, and also spoke for the fact that attacks are being made on abandoned field reservoirs by Russian troops. To date, footage has been published from our side, which means that the enemy, what we were talking about, has reached the T-shaped intersection where we have a building. We managed to repel the attack, returned to the starting positions to the Marinka of the Western brand. But still, what does this mean? Based on the vector of attacks, Garden Partnership, so the first vector, Smarinki, the second vector is a field reservoir, the third vector is a field reservoir, the fourth vector is victory. We can conclude that well, the enemy in any case has no problems with reserves now, so further assault actions will be carried out. This is the first moment. The second thing is that he is definitely aimed at advancing in the near future, and will most likely try to bypass victory, as we talked about earlier, but for this, he needs control over one of the field reservoirs, which is what he is betting on now, launching attacks from Avdeevka in the western, southwestern direction. I repeat, we do not record any changes, but the enemy is very, very seriously pressing on this sector of the front, including with the support of armored vehicles, including, I repeat, there are also battles going on in the direction of victory. Very heavy fighting is now on this sector of the front. We will comment on Novomikhailovka. So alas, as you remember, the enemy managed to gain a foothold in the eastern part. There is information that he is increasing pressure from the south on Novomikhailivka. That is again an attempt to come close to the territory of the cemetery, to the territory of the farm, industrial zone, and accordingly attack Timiryazov South Street. Try to gain a foothold on it due to the fact that there is already a blow from east to west along the street, along several streets. This is the first moment. The second point, which is also very important, is that from the north, from the fortified area, there are also attempts by Russian troops to advance. Naturally, they are more distracting, because the main forces are concentrated just the same east, southeast south of Novomikhailivka. But nevertheless, the enemy has also set as a goal now to carry out assault operations in Novomikhailivka and on its outskirts as much as possible. Therefore, very heavy fighting continues in the area of the gray zone. It remains to be clarified, due to the rather high intensity of fighting in this area. The key point, of course, should be noted: drones. Drones cope with a lot of tasks, but still long-range artillery, counter-battery fighting, it's natural with a lack of ammunition. It still affects, no matter how much we would like to hear it, but drones are quite effective, but they cannot provide a counter-battery naturally. The enemy is just conducting intensive artillery shelling and air strikes with tactical aviation bombs, which has been a lot of information from our side lately, because, well, I repeat, as I said yesterday, there have not been such a number of air bomb attacks during the entire period of the full-scale invasion of the Russian Federation. That is, not a single month for such a number. Therefore, it is very much, and very difficult, to conduct combat operations at the same time. We do not record any new changes in the remaining sections of the front, Velikonovo-Selkovskaya, Orakovskaya and Krinky. Well,